Tatiana Kovy, and this is podcast Happy at Work. In our podcast today, we decided to discuss a very interesting topic, the topic of alumni. This is community of ex-employees. And today, we will discuss it with one of the best international experts, the person who represents, I think, the number one company, provide a very interesting solution for alumni community. This is company People Path, and my guest today is Jenn Pedde. Hi, Jenn.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Happy to see you there. And before we start, please, would you make a short introduction, you and your company? I think the people maybe the first time have heard about your company, and I think it could be interesting for them.
Yeah, of course. I'm Jenn Pedde. I'm the Vice President of Customer Advocacy for PeoplePath. I've been with PeoplePath for about 3.5 years now, but I was a client of them for 5 years before that at Oliver Wyman, which is a global management consulting firm. And before that, I managed online communities for Oprah Winfrey, who I think she's pretty famous around the world, so you may know her. PeoplePath is a software as a service company. We have been around for a long time. We're a result of a merger between two companies, one in the US and one in Europe. We have clients all around the world. Our software works with some of the biggest companies, some of the smallest companies, all different industries. We help them manage relationships with their former employees. And so our software works with HR departments and other pieces of software, HR, CRMs, things like that, to help keep in touch with those people that have left in your company all throughout history. So I love it. It's a great industry, and looking forward to talking about this more.
Mm-hmm. I hope what alumni will be the next big trend in the world. I don't know why it's not mentioned so right now, like the employees as ambassadors, because the ex-employees is a very huge power for the company. And so my first questions for you: what are the alumni, and why companies worldwide decide to launch this type of community?
Yeah, absolutely. So alumni is kind of a word that is borrowed from university, right? We've borrowed it for corporate alumni, meaning former employees. So that's really what we say when we think about alumni. And it really is such a benefit to companies to utilize this and create relationships and keep those relationships going with their former employees for many reasons. And the reasons we've researched that are continuous and have been this way for more than a decade. There's three top ones. One is business development. So people will leave a company and they will then go to work for maybe a potential client. So there's potential business there, or an actual client, and keep their business going. They can come for talent acquisition. So talent acquisition meaning they might rehire people, and we find that they save money on those rehires, or boomerangs as they're known otherwise. They might save money on that rehiring, and they also save money and time on recruitment and the training and onboarding. And what we're finding in our recent research in the last couple of years is boomerangs tend to stay longer when they come back the second time, or they might be more involved than the average employee because they really do love the company. And that third reason is brand awareness. So they might not come back, they might not be a client, but they are a representative of your company forever. So what we find is when they're better treated as an employee, then the more likely they are as an alumni to refer your company as a place to work or as a place for business and services. So on average, we have one case study with a client that the alumni mentions the company about 8 times a year. So you want that to be positive, and you want that brand awareness to come through. And all three of those things can happen in any program, and some programs only focus on one or the other, but it really is beneficial for both the alumni and the company to foster these relationships.
Mm-hmm. I want to ask you, share your ideas, share your secrets. What company have to take into account when it decide to launch this program? What is the most important topics?
The most important topics from when a company, why they launch, is that what we're asking?
Yeah, decided to launch online.
So most of the time, companies like the business development, I'd say in a professional services way, these companies have done this forever. Professional services meaning consulting or accounting or law firms, things like that. They really get that person-to-person relationship building. So for them, their number one goal really is business development. We have other clients, though, that their primary goal is community building. So none of those three, business development, talent, or brand, but really it's about continuing that story, and ultimately goes back to the brand, but building community online is a big focus. A lot of retail or nonprofits will focus on this. And so it kind of depends on the company and the industry of why they might do this, but they always come with the company in mind. And I always tell them to think about the alumni in mind. What motivates alumni to participate in one of these programs, and why do they keep coming back? So always answering that question of why for the alumni is something you kind of have to always remind companies to think about.
What is the best way to find the answer for this why? What do you recommend for the company?
The why for alumni, you mean? We always survey alumni. I always recommend people to survey their alumni for a lot of reasons. One, if you're thinking about starting a program, and ask your alumni, do they want this? If they don't want this, don't waste time or energy, right? If they do want this, and most of the time they always do, what do they want as a part of it? What kind of features, what kind of events, what kind of content? And so that way they tell you what they want, makes it much easier. And then as you launch a program, to survey a program or your alumni every year or every other year, to continue that question, and also the ROI question. So how likely are they to recommend business? How likely are they to return to the firm? Things like that. You track over time, and you can see that in the beginning, it is pretty good, but in a few years, it might be pretty great. And so over time, you build those relationships, you offer services, and you ask alumni what they want and why they want it, and they'll tell you.
From your experience and from cases which you have, what is the most popular answer for this? Why? What usually motivate alumni for participating in a company's programs?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we did research in 2018 with Cornell University out of New York on this very question. And what we find is there's a few different pillars. The first one is career motivation. So they are looking to increase their career, follow their career path. Maybe they're starting from an entry-level position and eventually want to become a senior executive or something. So they are looking for an alumni networking opportunity or professional development in that way. The other one is social. So they really are just looking to keep in touch, and they liked who they worked with, and they just want to keep that social circle growing. There are other motivations that are always in alumni programs, but are usually not as high motivation. Is like they're pragmatic, so maybe they just want discounts. So if you've got a conference and you want to invite people to it, giving them a free ticket or a discounted ticket goes a long way. Or if you're working for a really big company, maybe you had benefits as an employee, like a discounted hotel room or something. So offering those discounts go a long way in that pragmatic motivation. And then the last one is mission, that they are really just attracted to the mission of the organization. So if it's a nonprofit, maybe they're doing good in the world, they want to stay a part of it. Law firms have pro bono work all the time, so they maybe want to be a part of those projects. So those four motivations, career, social, pragmatism, and mission-driven, are all in an alumni program, just at varying differentiation degrees. So we try to pretty much always focus on the career and social because that's the primary, but don't forget about the mission and discounts.
Mm-hmm. Usually when we talk about community management, we understand what we have to take into account two very important topics. The first is communication with members of community. And the second, the program of the community, or the activities of the community. What is your recommendation about this? What is the best way to plan your activity and to handle your communications with alumni?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Engagement is probably the number one question I get from every type of program, whether they're clients or not. Engagement is the hardest thing you're ever going to see on an online community of any kind, whether it's alumni or anything else. But my recommendations are keep it simple. So have a consistent plan. And so have a monthly or quarterly newsletter, have an annual event, have things that are kind of tentpole things that people can look forward to and sign up for. On average, I think you want to think about your audience. You want to segment your audience a bit to think about their career level and where they might be located, their industries that they're in, things like that. And also thinking about introverts versus extroverts, people who might want to show up to in-person events versus online events, people who want content-based events, people who are social events, right? There's all different ways to think about it. So just having one of each, one thought-based event per year, one social-based event per year, and whatever you want to do. I've seen everything. I've seen magic shows. I've seen day at the baseball park. I've seen wine tastings, golf outings, you name, go-karting, like anything you want to do, you can do. And people will sign up for as long as it's promoted well in advance and communicated. And so really communications, using your social media, using all your email tools, engaging your employees as well as the alumni goes a long way, because eventually employees will become alumni, so they know that this is there. So it's really just thinking about it like any other program. You want to market and communicate in a very consistent way and engaging those people in a thought-based way as well, and focusing on human interest stories. The alumni spotlights, we think about those once a month, big kind of magazine style focus. You promote an alumni who's going to have to do something really interesting. So those perform very, very well. And there's some of the highest clicked on types of content in almost every company I see. So lots to do there.
Usually when the company decide about this program, I try to find the best example on the market. And I know what you have a lot of examples of the companies who use People platform. Maybe could you share some ideas for our audience? Which company you could recommend as a reference for the best alumni program, and why do you like these cases?
You might get me in trouble. I can't pick a favorite client or company, but there's so many great ones out there that there's so many I could recommend. And a lot of it is on our website. We have a number of case studies. One of my favorite case studies is a company called Bechtel. They are a construction engineering company, and they focused on rehiring. And so they launched their alumni program initially with another vendor, and it just didn't work out. And they came over to us, I believe 2020. I had to check the exact year, but a couple of years ago they came over, and they've seen such great improvements, and their boomerang hires has gone through the roof. I think there is a 25% rehire rate, which is huge. The average rehire rate is about 8%. And so when you do more in the offboarding and you do more in communication, you tend to see higher numbers. And so them having 25% rehire rate is huge. So they're one of my favorite examples. The other examples that are on our website, and highly recommend people taking a look to read these case studies, is SAP and Starbucks as well. And so they're just doing really cool community building things and a lot of data oriented projects that they're focusing on. But I do think that any program that's very successful really understands the data, understands what's happening, how everything's working, and if something isn't working, kind of changing course and finding what does.
Mm-hmm. My next question is about offboarding process. I want to ask about it because I think that it is very important. How your employees, ex-employees left a company. I remember when I discussed with one of my colleagues about how you have to make your offboarding, and we discussed it. She said, wow, it's so complex, it's so difficult, and as any companies really do this. But we discussed the normal checklist and how to do it with the people, because for a lot of companies now, the people who decided to leave a company, any reasons, usually this is, they think like the loss for them. But and the process of offboarding is usually very short or sometimes very hard. What is your recommendation? If the company want to really have smart alumni, what it have to do during offboarding process?
Yes, you are very accurate. The offboarding process is very important in this whole process. There's so many things that can be done, and some of it's very simple and some of it is more systematic. One of the most simple things that somebody can do is when someone leaves and they get all that last day paperwork and all the HR stuff, include in a packet, an evergreen packet of information. One thing that it could have is maybe a checklist of all the things you have to do before you leave. It could have a thank you note from the CEO or managing partner or someone very senior to thank them for their time. It could also have a welcome to the alumni program. So here's all the things you're going to get as part of being alumni. And the last thing they can include is all the contact information. What email addresses do you need? What social media should you follow? Stay in touch with everybody. And that can be provided as PDFs. They don't need to be updated or changed. It can be sent with every other piece of paper. The more complicated things are things like getting an exit survey or an exit interview. There are a lot of research now on people providing career guidance. So changing that behavior a bit of when somebody leaves, viewing it as a positive thing and not a negative thing. So encouraging someone to come to you earlier and say, hey, I'm thinking about leaving, instead of putting in 2 weeks or 1 month or whatever the standard is where you are. Give more time so that way they can come off of projects, that they can take the time to put them in the right place. McKinsey is famous for this. They have career guidance offices, and they will take people who say, I'm looking to leave, and send them to interview at client companies. So then they create this great pipeline of former employees at current clients. And so things like that you can do in the offboarding. So it's not all at once and it's always being improved, but we are seeing a huge difference between 5 years ago and now, where 5 years ago, nothing was really offered. And now most companies are offering all sorts of support at the end, including everything I've just kind of talked about. So highly recommend HR departments getting heavily involved in improving the offboarding. Because I do believe that if you treat somebody well on their first day, you should always treat somebody well on their last day. And that leaves a long-lasting impression that will encourage people to help you and your company in the future when they don't have to.
Usually I really ask about mistakes or the problems which company could meet on this way. Because usually if we don't think about mistakes of other companies, it's a reason why we could also make mistakes. But lessons learned is very, very important for your success. Could you share the first, what is the common mistakes or maybe any unique mistakes or common problems that the company should expect, and how they could prevent?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. There's always things to learn from previous mistakes and failures. The biggest things I see commonly are, one is not having executive buy-in. So you might find a middle manager or a VP who's super interested in this and the program is doing okay, but without executive interest or buy-in, it won't really ever grow to the capacity that it could or show the results that it could. So sometimes having a lack of that connection to someone who's more senior can be a problem. The other thing that I see is not necessarily tracking data. So just kind of making things happen and hoping for the best. Using data and tracking and being sophisticated with it really, really goes a long way and helps. And the last thing is basically making sure that it's a strategic initiative, that it's not just the senior buy-in, but it's that the whole organization encompasses it, that you're using it in recruitment, that you're onboarding current employees, that current employees have access to it and know how to use it, then that offboarding piece, and finally the engagement of the alumni themselves. So thinking about the entire employee life cycle is very important and often missed, but it is getting better. So I do think that mistake is being fixed as we speak. So.
Jenn, I know what you provide the benchmarking report to the companies who have alumni. Could you share the important insights from your last report? And as I remember, as it's free and everybody who wants could get it after our podcast. Please, could you share the main insights?
Absolutely. So we've been doing a annual benchmarking report for 10 years. And so this is our 10th annual edition of that. So this year, like you said, it's free on our website to download. Anyone can download it. And it covers 10 years of looking at the data from 2014 through now, and then also what's happening now and other things. So in the 10-year data, we look at things like program size and budget and amount of team, full-time employees, things like that. And then in this year's data, we continue on some of our other questions about offboarding, employee life cycle. The last 2 years, we've added an engagement. So what does engagement look like, and getting some of those baseline statistics. It's such a rich report. It's only about 10 pages, but has a lot of charts and graphs and interesting anecdotes and stats. And it's from all industries. It is global. And in the future, when we do ask the survey, we give information about the program manager, so the time spent and the salary. So that's only for people who take the survey. So it's like next year to keep an eye out for that. But we are looking to grow this every year and make it more inclusive and geographically inclusive as well. So the more countries, the better, and the more people, the better, and the more programs, the better. But we've seen a huge increase. I think it was a 200% increase from 10 years ago to today of the amount of people taking the survey. And we've seen this was a record number of responses this year for people who've taken it. So a lot of good data, good results, and highly recommend taking a look at it.
That's great. What is about trends in this area of alumni? Because doing your reports every year, you see how this area is changing. I think it's a huge change, especially the last 3-5 years. Could you share your ideas about global or maybe local trends in this area that the company should focus on when they launch their program or when they develop
Sure.
this program?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a couple of things. In the US specifically, we see that the average tenure is not very long. So I don't know about other countries in particular, but for example, in the US, if you are under 35, you spend 2.7 years at a company. If you are everyone else, all ages, it's 4.1 years. So as of today, most people are not spending more than 2 to 4 years at a company. They are going to leave. So we think that in the future, you will have someone who is a part of not only one alumni program, but multiple alumni programs. And we see that already in industries like consulting. So if you are working for the big consulting companies, you're moving between McKinsey and BCG and Bain and Oliver Wyman, and you're going back and forth amongst all of them. So you're not only a part of one, you're a part of 4 alumni programs. So we think all industries are going to grow into this. And in the future, about 10 years from now, we think you'll be a part of many networks. And that's how the future of work will evolve. It'll become more of the gig economy. And so maybe it's more contract and freelance opportunities through companies you used to work for. So you'll use those networks to find that, or full-time opportunities as well. And additionally, as far as trends go, we see more results are coming from this. So this year we saw that 18% of companies, so almost 1 in 5 companies, can see up to $50 million in revenue from alumni assisted sales, meaning that when alumni go to work for your clients, they give you business. And so these are huge numbers that we're seeing. And so we expect that to continue, especially as tracking and measuring gets better.
My next question is about the team who manage this program from the company side. What is your recommendation on how to organize the process of management from the company side? One person full-time or part-time, any other persons inside the company who helps any person outside from ex-employees who could be interested in this community, what is your recommendation? What are your recommendations?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've seen this grow as well. We believe that to launch a alumni program, you could get away with half of a full-time person, someone doing it as a part-time job. But what we've seen in the data is that almost all programs now, I think it's around 90%. I'd have to double check that, but I think over 90% have at least a full-time person managing a alumni program. But what we've seen the last couple of years is a growth in 2 or 3 people managing these programs. And so what we're seeing is kind of a director who works with the executives and the strategy and the overall day-to-day management of it. And then you have a second person who's kind of that coordinator or manager who will make everything happen on the website, the content, the events, the data, all that kind of stuff. So we're seeing those 2 things grow pretty quickly. And we are seeing it being entered more into, like I said, the life cycle. So we're seeing other parties be a part of it. So HR, internal comms, marketing, all of those people are a part of it to help share out the message and use it as a platform and an audience, and utilize it as the tool that it is. And so when it comes to staffing, I think we do think that is definitely growing.
Mm-hmm. I think you have a huge experience in arguing about this program for CEOs of company, for CFO of the company. What could you advise to the people who want to launch this program in their company and decided to sell these ideas to a C-level? What could you recommend? Which arguments work better? Which cases? So what is?
Well, the first thing I would recommend is contacting us. We're more than happy to help you do it. We do this all the time where somebody's in the company thinks it's a great idea, and maybe their manager thinks it's a great idea, but they got to bring it to a board or something. And so that happens all the time. And so come to us, see a demo of the platform, get a feel for how this is working. And we will then help you kind of craft that story. But then for you, you just have to kind of come with data, read everything you can. We have a ton of great resources on our website, our webinars, and our benchmark reports and other research that we do. So that will help you make the case to present it. And you just got to get some time on somebody's calendar and say, hey, Mr. CEO, I'd like to show you this idea, and here's why I think it'll work, and the money it'll save us, and all that kind of stuff. And you'll get their ear. So that's what I recommend is do the legwork, get the research, put a presentation together, and make the case.
One more question is about how to make what your alumni life for a long period, because the people change in the company, but for company, the company stays stable, and it will be interested for a long life for this community. What is your recommendation? What we have to look into account in the beginning, or maybe during the process, maybe some innovations, doing something new, or situation with the first year, everything is good, everybody happy, but the next year, less and less and less, and we stop this activity. What is the recommendation? What we have to take into account for long life?
Yeah. Absolutely. Great question. We see that the longer that you have an alumni program, the better the data gets if you're feeding it, if you're creating content, creating events, right? It does happen where something just kind of falls by the wayside, somebody leaves, nobody picks it up. And so that happens, but you can always revitalize an alumni program, relaunch it, redo it, recreate it, whenever that happens. But in order to avoid it happening, it's really consistent planning. So I always tell people to think about making a plan for a year, 2 years, 3 years. And then every year reiterate, update that plan. So that way you're always having something to look forward to. And our research this year that we found that the longer you have alumni programs, the more people will register. So you'll have a successful launch, that always happens. And then there's a little bit of a lull because people get excited and they go away. Alumni programs can be pretty transactional. So you come to them when you need it, not every day like you would like LinkedIn or something. So it's really about just making sure the resources are there and the content is fresh, and that there are events. The events are the biggest thing to keep in mind. But just having a simple plan that you execute year over year, track the data, and present it. And as people change in an organization, as long as you have someone to hand it over. We do have a transition tool for people when somebody leaves. You can document everything and make sure that the new person is up to speed pretty quickly. So it really is just making sure that someone does own it. That is the biggest thing. And when somebody doesn't own it and it falls by the wayside, as soon as you put someone in place, it can be built back up pretty quickly. So pretty resilient program over time, and shows results over time.
Mm-hmm. What is about trends about industries now who like this type of program? We discussed with the consulting companies. I think this is number one industry who, which is really effective in using the alumni. What is about any other type of industries you see would start to launch these programs from the business perspective or from the HR perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question. That is kind of our hope that more industries will take this on in the future, but all industries right now have some examples of alumni programs. So technology would be a really big one, especially if there's big layoffs or if there's big changes in technology. Having an alumni program ready would be very helpful. And there's a lot of unofficial alumni programs for those industries. Like Google is a perfect example where they have a grassroots alumni program that's not company-based. I think Nike is another one where it's not company-based, but it's very popular and used by the alumni. So there's a lot of grassroots efforts in those industries. But we think that technology, retail, healthcare will all be industries that grow in the next 5 to 10 years, purely because of the amount of people and the success of something like Starbucks that shows that there's value and power in that storytelling. I think will become even bigger in those other industries. But right now we have clients in all aspects, in healthcare, technology, retail, nonprofits, energy. They're there, but we want to see those numbers grow.
I have one additional question based on what you say. This is about formal and informal alumni. What is your ideas? Sometimes other people, when we like company, we have their groups of alumni because we really like networking with each other, spend time and do something. And what in the situation, company decided to launch official alumni. What is the best strategy for communicating with employees who is now really active, but maybe they are not managed by the company? What is your advice? Maybe you have the same type of cases.
Well, I'm a bit biased in this, where I do think that the best case is when the company embraces it, when it owns it, it manages it, it provides resources to it. But that being said, it's not required. And so alumni organizations have often gotten their start in a grassroots effort. And so a lot of times it's there. It's in a LinkedIn group somewhere. No matter what company it is, there is going to be a group of alumni, former employees organizing somewhere, whether they're friends or other. But some of them can grow pretty big. And so they are just as important. Microsoft is a great example where it's not inside of the organization, but the organization is partnered with this group. And this group is very important and includes all the Microsoft alumni, and it operates on its own, but it operates with a membership model. So you pay to join that organization and you get hopefully some benefits back. But it's very popular, and that's how I think pretty much it's always been, or at least the majority of its time has always been grassroots funded. And so it can be just as effective, just as efficient. It still needs the technology. It still needs a platform and a home base to grow it to its potential. And that's usually why company sponsored works better. And you get to own and control the data. You get to own and control the branding. Whereas if it's unofficial, you don't always have the proper rights to do that. You could always have a cease and desist for the branding part of it, but that doesn't send a good story. So you always want to make sure you're promoting and building relationships rather than tearing them down.
And my last question for you, because of time limits for how it is, I think it's important. Last questions. 3 main advice from your side to the companies who decide to launch the alumni program.
Say it one more time. What's the main advice for launching a corporate alumni program?
Three main advices. But now
Sure.
imagine what you are talking with companies who decided to launch, and three main advices from your side as the consultant.
Sure. Absolutely. So I think having the resources available to do it, make sure that you have everyone bought in and are excited to do it, is the biggest takeaway. The second thing I would say is be creative, have fun with it, right? Like this is fun. It's supposed to be fun. You're supposed to engage people, have a good time. We're not curing cancer, right? We're building relationships. We're keeping people up to date and building careers. It's a very fun thing to do. And the last thing is, like I said, make sure you're always tracking stuff. Make sure you have a plan for a strategy and for tracking it, and you will have a successful program from the start. So those are my three main takeaways.
Jenn, thank you for this conversation. For me, it was very interesting, very insightful. It was my first time when I have deep dive into the topic of alumni. I like it, but it's not so often discussed in the HR community, and I hope in the future the situation will change. Thank you for participation in our podcast.
Thank you for having me. This was super fun, and we hope that more HR departments are interested in alumni.
This is podcast Happy at Work. My name is Tatiana Kovan. Stay in touch.